I think we are up and running it with only a modicum of fuss. Just before the stream started, I was playing a little bit of what's this thing called? The Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle game thing. I can't quite remember the name. It's been a while since I purchased it. One of a string of games for the Nintendo Switch that my wife and I were sad to learn when it says you can play cooperatively. It doesn't necessarily mean that. In the particular case of this game, that means that after you play by yourself for a while, you'll unlock a couple of maps for you to play with someone else with, and then they can go away while you play by yourself some more, which is not quite what we expected, but I've been picking it up a little bit lately, and it's a pretty good game, although I am not a fan of the style of boss battle where you fight the boss and it looks like you've beat him, and instead he just morphs to another form, and then you have to fight him again, and then he morphs to another form, and then you can fight him again. I've never been a fan of that, but that is neither here nor there. Hello, everybody out there in Sublime Text Land. Welcome to this live stream for today, October 15th, if I'm remembering correctly, the day after Canadian Thanksgiving. So, to all the Canadian viewers out there, happy Thanksgiving to you all. Much like myself, where we did a whole lot of giving thanks that couches are for sitting on. For tonight's stream, we're going to be working on a little bit of, hang on a second, a little bit of override audit patch action, and then I have also regularly scheduled randomness where I'm not entirely sure what all to do, because at a certain point we are going to hit a part where we're creating patches where we're going to need to be able to actually apply the things again, and that's where things start to get a little bit more complicated, but we do have some more background work to do before we get to that point. So without further ado, let's jump on in to the action. And of course, I'd like to point out that here on this channel, we do live streams more or less every Tuesday, depending on a schedule, because I have very little free time to split up amongst the other channel I do videos on, and this one in helping people in the Sublime Text forum. So if live streams are your bag and you'd like to see live package development and glean my quote-unquote insights into developing packages for Sublime Text, welcome. You can watch live, pop into the chat, ask questions as much as you like, even questions about Sublime that aren't necessarily related to what we're working on. And if targeted videos are more your bag, there's a link down in the description of this video to my alternate channel where I'm doing weekly Sublime Text tutorial videos. And the first thing we're going to say in this one is that I have been doing a little bit of work behind the scenes since the last stream. But before we get into that, there's something that I would like to do, and that is modify my key bindings here, because somewheres down in my custom bindings, I have this binding back when I used to use the Git package. I was using that to do things like stage files and things of that nature. And for example, if I was to comment this out like so and save it so that key binding goes away, my workflow for a long time in Sublime Text was to use the submerge package like so in a file to be able to see what lines are different, make any modifications that I might want to make, and then I would use Control-Alt-G to open the command palette, focusing all of the Git commands, and choose the command for staging a file, and so on and so forth, and maybe even make a commit, and the commit editor would pop up. And around the time I was deciding, you know what, Git Savvy, that seems like a nicer package to use than Git for a few things. That's when Sublime Merge started being a thing, and I started using that instead. And as a result, I transitioned away from actually using the Git package, and to a fair degree Submerge 3 Pro 3 as well, because I was primarily using it for vetting changes, and now I can do that in Sublime Merge. But what I would like to do here is change this key that I used to pressing, and we can go ahead and join that up to a different thing instead. Now, I don't think we need arguments for this, but I think what we want is Sublimer. No, I okay. So I don't know offhand. Yeah. What actual command I'm looking for here, but if I was to look in the default sidebar menu like so, let's say for a mount point, what the heck? Nope, I guess it must have been the other one. That's unfortunate. I could also have just used the logging, but I would like to map the command that opens this repository in Sublime Merge to that particular key, and if that's not in that menu in the mount sidebar mount point, then that's just in the sidebar menu instead. Or should be open get response Sublime Merge open repo. Huh, I'm surprised that did not. Oh, I guess because I did smurge, didn't I? Open repo. A lot of submerge commands in here that are maybe messing with it, but we'll go ahead and and do that. There we go. So now if I press Control Alt G, boop, there's my user package. Perfect. That's what we would like to see. And close that and quit that bad boy. We'll go ahead and change that later. Well, I guess now we can go ahead and just close that window as a whole so that we can do this to open the override audit thing. So I can show you some stuff that has been happening. One thing, and I can't remember if I mentioned this in the last stream or not, was changes to the diff syntax and the settings that we've added here. I've modified the patch generation code to always make sure that translate tabs to spaces is turned off when the patch is written for the diff command, and then turn back to whatever the default is. And then the default settings are, if you want to save this, don't trim trailing white space, and default to word wrap being off, which isn't, it's one of those things that makes reading a diff hard to read. But otherwise, everything else is the same there. And then what we also did, and I think, yeah, there's even, you can see I was doing some remerging here. So there's a stash here that's maybe not interesting. That's adding the command to everything. I made a slight tweak to something in here, which I can't quite remember. We're going to go ahead and tweak that up. And the last thing was this one. We added a new setting for specifying where the patches are going to go when we create them. Because remember, when we create a patch, we're going to be creating a textual patch file, which is something that we could just generate into a view and set a setting that allows the file to be saved with the appropriate name. The issue with that is we might need a sidecar file as well. And then what do we do there? I think you want the sidecar file to be named the same as the patch file so that you can associate the two of them, with each other. And there's not a good user interface for prompting the user to select a file name short of using the built-in save command. So what we're looking at in that case is something where when you try to generate a patch, it would generate the textual version and then also create the sidecar file, but put it in the temp directory with a name and keep that file around, and maybe save the name of it in a setting in the view so that an on post save event handler would know this was just saved. Let's move the sidecar file into place, which sounds like a great idea, but we run into some issues with that. The most obvious one being if you quit Sublime and restart, sure, the setting will persist, but the temporary file might not be there. And then what do we do in that case? If you save this and there's supposed to be a sidecar file, should it pop up a thing saying the sidecar file is missing? That might be a way to go. haven't quite decided yet what the best user experience for something like this will be. So because we're going to just sort of proceed forward on the development path of deciding, and getting all of the features in place so that we can generate these files and apply them in other situations and see how that all works out and how that all shakes out. Because even what we have so far, not even related to what the name of the patch is, but just the contents of the files, is potentially subject to change. So I don't want to get too bogged down in that sort of minutia. So what we've come up with is this new setting called default patch path. Defaults to an empty string. If that's the case, it will try to put something on your desktop instead. And if your desktop is a folder that doesn't exist and it's kind of naive about how it determines that, it'll just use your home directory. Or you could specify a path in here and it'll fall back to your desktop and then your home directory if the path doesn't exist. That will be the place where it's offered by default, and that's going to be displayed in the bottom of the window for you to be able to choose, and you can textually change it if you want to, which is actually this part of this is taken from how package control works with generating package files, which I believe it does for a similar reason. But that doesn't even allow you to modify the patch file name. So there's a little bit of a difference in that regard. And also, I took that patch creation code that we had and shifted off into its own file named patch just to make things a little bit easier on our live. So we can see that file has been checked in, and here's code for determining what the patch base path is going to be and what the patch name is going to be. But all the other code for that is still in an unstaged file here, particularly in this one. And also there's this create patch command, which is theoretically calling into that, where a couple of things have changed, but we're not really doing too much with that just yet as well. So that's what has changed behind the scenes here. And we got some to-dos in here. We should be saving the patch into a temporary file, then moving it. I believe that's not new. We should detect if a file is binary and add it to a sidecar file, which also needs to happen coincident with this. If the patch ends up empty, that is, we patched nothing, then we should just delete it and say no differences there. And otherwise, there's error handling probably needs to have more stuff happening here. I'm not entirely sure if you can, what happens if you nest two context managers. I mean, I assume that's probably okay, but it's not really something that I fiddle with all that much. But there's a few things that I would like to get done in this particular code, and in no particular order, if I can remember correctly now, because I didn't actually write this down. All my boogie boards have other notes for a work project written on it. One is to make the context sensitive command a little bit smarter than what it currently is, because it will actually allow you to try to create a patch file for something that can't even have a patch on it. I think we'll have to check into that. And there's another, which is some code that's in this do file patch thing here. That's all in section that has been recently added and isn't checked in at the moment, which has to do with what the version number is here, like so. So let's go ahead and do this. That's not necessarily great. So let's say version equals package version, like, oh, actually that's a string that's pulled in, is it? Oh, actually, yeah, I've forgotten how that works. If space in package version, then we would say package version equals package version dot split on space. I can't remember. Something like that, I think. But let's see. If x was equal to Sublime 3211, then x split gives us that. What if there was more than one space in here? Does that give us, yeah, it gives us multiples, huh? Well, that still works out because x dot split like that with -1 gives us that. And that's pretty much what we want this to be. Just because, and I haven't reloaded this yet. So if we said create a patch for a package and the package was default, you see what we end up here is OADiff packages default version is Sublime 3211, which is not a particularly nice version number. But with this change in place, if we reload the package and do it again, another problem with this is it doesn't warn you if the file already exists. So that's a little something we need to worry about too. Now we can see that the version is 3211. Now something to double check here is this is a package that doesn't ship with Sublime. And we have the version is 1.1.0. Okay, so that's what we want for that. So that's one of the changes we wanted to make. That's pretty easy thing to make. We're not even going to check that in. This is for grab the Sublime version number for default. Oh, sorry, for shipped packages. And that could also be done by modifying the information in the stashed metadata. But then I really want, and I should also point out, if you have not been watching the live streams or aren't up to date with the latest features in Override Audit, there's this feature now where you can hover over packages and it tells you what their version are. This default package is from Sublime Text 3211, and Package Control Loader is version 1 because it doesn't really generate. I don't think it's the first version of that particular dependency. Automatic Package Reloader is version 1.3.7. So I want this to say Sublime 3211 and not just version 3211. So what are the options here? One is the stock metadata that we're shipping could just have the version number, and then the code that generates the thing needs to know that when it's a shipped or default package, then it has to add Sublime in front of it, which is problematic because the thing that knows that the package is a default package is the thing that generated the default metadata in the first place. So now we're talking about having an extra field in all of those things just to know that that's the default version, which is, I don't know, maybe not bad, but it seems kind of weird. Here, we're instead presuming that any version number in a package, if there is one, is either going to be unknown if there's no metadata for it, which is enforced by the code in the package generation code, or it's a valid semantic version, in which case it has no spaces in it, or it's one of these. So we can just split it on words and take the last word. And that allows us to, if we said that the version was Sublime Text 3211, this still picks the appropriate thing. So that's one thing that we like there. Now, also note, when I say I want to create a patch for a package, there's only these packages show up because this command knows these are the only packages that have an unpacked version and also a Sublime a Sublime package version. And I think it's even also smart enough to know if there's actually any files in there or overrides in there, which is nice for the purposes of this. However, in the package report, I think if we try to do it on automatic package reloader, it says create patch 4, and it really shouldn't because this can't contain a patch. It doesn't have an unpacked folder. And it's also going to say it for Bob, but it shouldn't really say it for Bob because there's no patch to be made because it needs to be shipped or installed. So this command isn't as smart as it could be. And it turns out my initial implementation of this, I was still thinking in my head, like, how would I know that the package Bob can have a patch? I need to know that it's unpacked and also shipped or installed. But in order to figure that out, we have to scoot through the files and the folders to see if there's a Sublime package in the installed packages folder or any of its subfolders, if there's a Sublime package file in the packages folder alongside the application for the case of a ship package. And we have to look to see if there's a folder inside the packages folder. Definitely doable because that's how this works, but that is bad for doing that every time you right click, and this command needs to know. As a matter of fact, it could even get invoked potentially more than one time. So if it appears in more than one menu, for example. So that wasn't great, but it turns out that that information is actually available because this thing knows to say that the package currently doesn't contain overridden package resources because there's actually settings that the view applies that stores the metadata for this pop-up to be used. So in that regard, we actually could grab this information if we wanted to. And oh, my goodness, what happened there? I'm going to have to look back to see. Package resource viewer dot sublime package sample text can file. I'm going to have to look and see in the replay exactly when this popped because it looks like the code in packages.py is broken, but did it do that when I right clicked on this thing? That's me generating a patch. That's me generating a patch. Oh, did it do that when I tried to create a patch for package resource viewer? Did I even do that? Huh. Okay, so there is actually a problem here then. Okay, that's good. Maybe we fix that too. Let's go ahead and do that just so we can double check. So what exactly is it angry about there? Let's do that one more time. Package resource viewer, create patch 4. Oh, well that didn't do it that time. Huh. That loads. Yeah, that's well, why is it saying that? Let's go ahead and bulk diff this thing. File does not exist in the underlying package file, cannot diff. Okay. So cannot find file in Sublime pack. Oh, well, I guess. What is doing that? Is that something I'm doing? I wouldn't have thought so. Oh, maybe because the thing that I'm using to load it sort of assumes that it might be there. Huh. Well, that's something to worry about later, I suppose. Just for giggles. Error loading, that's what we saw there, right? Cannot find file in. It's this one right here, which, probably comes as no surprise. If you try to get packed package file content, it'll do that. I mean, yeah, okay. So that's cool. That weird error that we were getting there for this one. Packages.py. Let's take a look at that. In line 1025, that's get item. Where did it come from before that? Create patch line 49. Okay, so if it's broken in something that we're still actively working on, that's less scary. Create patch in line 49. Oh, wait a minute. Did I, no, that's right. Let's check one more layer back. In the lambda. How did that end up being none? Huh. Undone. Wonder what key error none means. You tried to do something that it didn't look up. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look back through the thing unless we can see that happening again. Let's clear the console for now. So, boy, that really throws a monkey wrench in the old planadoodle. What what actually is going funky there. But in regards to, oh, hang on a second. Sorry about that. In regards to the other thing we want to do, it would be nice if, does this do it? If we do it from here? No. Oh, did it do it for a package that doesn't, that, well, maybe that was what I did when I did it for Bob. Nope, that's okay. That's an example of it noticing that the thing was broken. And this one, nope, that works too. Huh. Well, that is just weird, man. Weird. Um, if we want this to be smarter, that is the context command for creating a patch like so. And when is it enabled? We get the context, the report type, and is it a package diff from self-get context? And it's enabled if this view represents an override or a single package file. And which this code is actually appearing in a couple of places, perhaps I think. Get context does that. One thing we could do here is verify the settings. Is visible, otherwise it's only, yeah, this is an example of why we want to do this quote unquote intelligently. I mean, that's always a good idea, but because if you want to know if the command is enabled, you have to run this code, and if you want to know if the command is visible, it's only visible if it's enabled. So is this, both of these things use the same code, and in fact, as a result, is enabled, gets up and ends up getting invoked twice. See, that's why we don't want to do a lot of stuff in here. Has target or, okay, so what we might say is enabled if this view represents an override. This context has target, return true. Okay, now we say if CTX package only or is package diff, like so, then something. Well, that would do what we're currently doing, otherwise false. Enabled when we are in a package. Oh, actually, no, I think we'll do that way. As I say, is package diff is returned if this is actually a bulk diff for a package, which could indicate that that's something that we want, but because you generally, if you were to use something like this and say bulk diff single package, it only allows you to choose packages that have overrides, but you could run the command manually with any argument you want, so we don't want to do that. We'll just silence that for a second. So I think it is in fact a good idea to do this way. So now those can go away like so. So this should still work the same as it did before, but like if we said like so and reload, then we'll see that if I do it here, it says package stuff. You'll see it actually says it 3 times because it needs to know if it's enabled and if it should be visible. And then sometimes it calls is enabled a second time in a weird way. If we were inside of, let's see, let's close that. Let's close that. We got too many of those we don't care about. Well, actually, I suppose if we create an override report and edit this thing from inside here, we see the command is enabled, but it doesn't print package stuff because it knows. So that still works the way we want. Anytime this could be invoked this way, we would need to know the view target. So I don't think that this returns the actual view as part of the context. Yeah, it just returns package override isDiff and source. So I suppose one thing we could do is make that contain the view as well. That seems like it might be a good idea. Let's play with that a little bit. Go to definition. View is equal to property item getter 4. Okay, package override isDiff source and view and return view. And say that's just always going to be in there no matter what. We'll leave the view out of the repr for now because it's not something that can be used to recreate the thing. I would imagine. You can create a view by ID, can't you? Well, we'll worry about that at another point. So if I did that, then everywhere there is a command context. You ever notice that sometimes these panels get slightly higher and you don't know why, and then all those fields are just a little bit taller than they should be? There's the command where that's happening. I guess because yeah, this thing is actually creating the thing. Did that show up in the find results? Yeah, okay, so here, view. View is none, view is that. Could still be none, we don't know. But those are the only places where this exists, the actual class, and that, and this is earlier up in that thing, right? Okay, so if that's the case, and if we did that, then here in isEnabled, we could say print checking and that, and then we could do ctx.view.id like so. Actually, is that a buffer ID? View.id. Yeah, that's totally a thing. The number that uniquely identifies this view. All right, so if that's the case, then over here in the package report, ooh, view object, oh, that is very unhappy. What horrible thing has gone back here? Edit override. If it's the last thing, that should still work, shouldn't it? Maybe we quit and restart here for one thing. And also close that view. So if we said, okay, unhashable type view. All right. Well, if that's the case, then I think what we need to do is this. And that might solve the problem. Oh, or not. Oh, I see. Yeah, I guess the view ID could be none, couldn't it? Well, if that's the case, then I guess this is just a little bit potentially too too in-depth a change for the current time. So let's not do it that way. And instead, we need to return that here. Da, da, da. Yeah. So if we look at what this is doing, it needs to call that. So if that's the case, yeah, we don't need two copies of the core open. Let's go ahead and, well, let's get rid of that one too. We don't necessarily need that one neither. This one here. We don't need, well, we could. This is a text command, right? It has to be a text command. We could do a little bit of that. And then all the places where get context happens, which is here, we would also have a comma underscore because we don't care about the view in that case. And here we would want a comma view like so. So that should still all do what one might expect, but I suppose we need to have some sort of report to be able to do it in. Oh, I still have code in here that I shouldn't have, right? Yeah. Well, actually, now it can look like that. Okay, so that should do what we thought we were going to do before. That'll always be 31 for this, and it's deciding on package stuff. Great, so we know that part's doing a thing. And that's something that probably makes a good addition later, making the context actually track that. But that'll take a little bit more time to trace exactly what's going on because that command context is used in a bunch of places. And the fact that I'm trying to make a class out of a named tuple kind of thing like that for reasons I can't 100% remember at the moment, it's a whole thing. So we need to remember what the settings are. And for that, we are going to look at the package pop-up because wait, oh, actually, I guess I could do this, couldn't I? Perhaps. That. Da, da, da. Pop-up link. No, I can't quite remember. I think that is a thing. Okay, so like so if oh, we need to know what the name of the oh, let's actually print like that. And we'll go ahead and do that too. And well, we don't need to, whoops. We don't need to do that because it's going to be pretty obvious what's actually happening there. Actually, what I'm going to do is pop that out into a window and drop it over here on this desktop so I can monitor it a little bit easier there while we're working on stuff. Because what we want to do here, and make sure that has reloaded appropriately, is, okay, that in here we can see is printing the name of the actual package in some cases. For that one it does. For that one it does. That's still ASP. Why was it not doing it there a second ago? That seems to be, yeah, there's an example of, oh, maybe, oh, because maybe I did it for the same package multiple times in a row or something. I could have swore I didn't though. And this one, okay, and that is getting it from the context from right-clicking on a name. But if we bulk diffed a single package and that package was C#, say, then inside of this folder, we end up with none, which is semi-unfortunate because we need to know the name of this package. It's totally in the setting that this thing is pulling out, though. Where is R type actually used in here? So in the description method, override, oh, context package or R type. Huh. So let's also print where we're printing that. And that. So if I do it here, R type C++. Now, that's, like what a guy wants. But, oh, I guess this actually does the work of, no, it just gets the setting and returns it. Right, so I'm confused because if I did view.settings.get, I would expect it to come back with :C++, but it doesn't. Oh, I see. It's a colon for the ones that don't have it. Well, that's okay. What makes you think that a guy that wrote a package would remember how it works, So package name is equal to ctx.package or R type. And then we can, print package name like this. Okay. Now, if we reload that over here, on the name, it should print C++, and it does, and because that's coming from the buffer. But here, it's still printing C++, so that's good. So we can say if package name, oh, sorry, do this. And packages then do this. So we still see it printing there, which is what we want. I guess we could just say this. Package info is equal to packages.get package name none. Package info. To do the same sort of thing, but also have the actual information. And here we could actually print package info like this, so that we can actually see the information that we get out of this, which we need to know is shipped or is installed and is unpacked is the magic here. So return package info.is. Oh, and we can't even do it that way, can we? Because that's what the fields look like, but it's a dictionary. Sometimes I miss the idea that dot notation to access something is a syntactic sugar for dictionary access in Python. Whoops. Is shipped or is, what's the other one? Is installed and package info is unpacked. Okay, so if we do that, now if we do it here, it's create patch 4. If we do it here, it's create patch 4. So those ones still seem to work. In the package report, it should work for default. And it does. Create patch for default is right there. If we do it on automatic package reloader, it shouldn't because there's only an installed package. And create override in is there, but create patch isn't, so that's right. If we do it here, this is just a shipped file, but not an installed file, so it shouldn't work here, and it doesn't. And down here in user, it shouldn't work because it's only an unpacked package, and it doesn't, but it should work in XML because that's shipped and installed, and it should work in Submerge 3 because it's installed and unpacked, and that works as well. So great. That is a nice little bit of action there. I guess. Enabled when we're in the package diff. Enabled for a package if it's possible for it to contain overrides, for example. Okay. So let's verify. Well, actually, we can't really. That is a bunch of stuff that we don't need to look at right now. Context create patch. What did we do? We modified this to return. Should I not be able to? Oh, sorry. No, that catches me out more times than not. That scroll stops the context from working. So we return the view target so we can use it later if we want. In the call to the description method, to call to that in the description method, we just throw it away because we don't care about it. And down in this one, let's go ahead and do that. Use the report settings. So if it has that, it's true. If it's package only or package diff, then we get the setting, get the package name, get the info. Maybe I like the order of that another way. And I like to be explicit about some stuff. So I think what we would put here for this is if info is not none. And we want the package name first, then the list of packages, then the information for the package. Now, right now that is, yeah, it hits the 80 character limit, but so does that. So I kind of like the readability of that and the fact that package info is used in a lot of places. So that's a nice way to go there, I think. So I think that does, in fact, make this a smarter action. So, yeah. Now, if we went over to here, that should actually be part of this commit, I think, for the new patch creation logic. Where is this where context create command appeared? Yes, context create patch appeared right there. So I think, let's see how well this works, because it might work good or it might be terrible. I'm going to save the message as blurb like this and stage this file and commit it and then come back to here and move this commit down. Oh, actually, can I do this? I think what we might want to do, and we'll see what happens here. Move this commit down so it comes before that one. Oh, there's unstashed changes. Right. Okay, create a stash for that. So there's absolutely nothing going on here. So if we move this commit down, and then we move it down again, well, I mean, I guess that's not the greatest thing. Okay, yeah, you can go away now. Let's abort that. So that's not what we want to do there, I guess. What we'd really like to do is combine this with this, but there's multiple things coming off of it. Can we do this? Set up for new, oh, did I do that the wrong way? Probably didn't I? Well, let's see. Context create patch doesn't return anything. So let's undo what we just did there, because that was not what one would have expected. It's also, well, don't undo the abort. Oh, that was a real mess up. So we're not entirely sure. Well, we could just see me totally mess up my Git repository. I shouldn't have done that when I already had that other work in progress thing going there. Well, this was randomness, wasn't it? The nice thing about this is I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so let's see. This is the one that I would like to have been put there. Then from there, create new setting. Now what was, oh, this one and this one are probably the same, aren't they? Ish, except for how we modified that a little bit. Okay. So let us apply, let's pop that stash and then stash it again. And then let's apply, let's pop that stash. Can't do that, huh? I wonder why. Well, the stash went, well, the stash didn't go away. Pop stash. Okay, so yeah. Well, it's kind of cleaned up a little bit. That's the version of that. Syntax additions. Okay. Include a new setting for the patch, including these should both be the same-ish. I would have thought. Diffing that and that. Oh, because the view thing is in there. Ah, man. Okay. That was the whole of the make patching. Do I have an untracked file in here still? No, I don't. Just that business. Okay, and things are kind of funko right now. That's good to know. Okay, let's just, well, let's not do that just yet. What's in this one? Oh, sorry, that's not the thing. This is the thing. And import datetime. Okay, so if that's there, then we can discard that and discard that to get us back to kind of a nice-ish state. So there's the syntax definition. There's setup per new patch creation logic. Can this and this be merged together? Okay. Syntax addition, setup for new patch creation logic. See, that's why it doesn't seem to be necessarily doing what I might think that it would do, because I would have thought that this, was I not picking squash? Because it doesn't look like it. It looks like there's the syntax definitions that we want, and then there's this. There's multiple things. Oh, actually, maybe I'm just an idiot, and it goes from there to set up for new patch creation logic like this. And one of the things in here is the context create patch, and it is returning view target. So that one is actually the one that we want. So now if I pop this dash, which does not work, but conflict is, well, let's say we squirt that in. Yeah, I see. I see. Cancel, cancel. Let's oh, yeah, okay, let's just go ahead and stage it. And then we can unstage that one and unstage that one. Discard that and discard that for the time being. Okay, so we have that. We have set up for new patch creation logic, which is that one. This one is on the thing that we don't necessarily need. So if we have this, we're working our way through it. This is the one where we added the syntax. Then the next one in the branch is adding for the new patch creation logic, which adds the items to the command palette and that context create command that we just fiddled with, and items in the uh, main menu, which we should also verify. Tab context menu. We have patch create patch commands. We needed to add that there and import them and export them in the init. We have context create patch, which is our whole file, which is the same as it would have been before, except now that it has this return for self view target. So we know that is definitely doing something. And then we have the create patch command, which isn't doing anything interesting, and that, which is exactly what we want. Then we have a new setting thing for that, which is absolutely grand. So now what we might do is apply this one. Okay, and the two unstaged changes here. If that is going to go cleanly, let's go ahead and discard all. Yeah. Let us apply, so let's pop this one and then stash it again like this. So it's moved up. Then we need to apply this one. This is the one that's going to conflict, right? Yeah, okay, so let's resolve that. Go ahead and save and stage without doing anything. Then we can unstage both, discard all. So we know that's definitely hoop-de-doo. But if we compare this with this, what do we end up with? In the new one, we have self-view target where we didn't. Here we have the is enabled where we didn't before. That now returns something different. Create patch file, slightly different. This code is something new that I added. That's something new that I added. So this actually is the new one is the one we want. So I think what we can do is drop this stash like so. That one is one we don't care about. Now things are a little bit cleaner and we can pop this stash and we're nicely back to where we were, and whew, that only took a while. So there's our syntax, there's us setting up for the patch creation logic with the stuff we want. We probably made Sublime very unhappy. The settings were reloading a whole bunch, as we can see there. And that still seems to load, so that's nice. And then there's a new setting, so that's all good. And the unstaged changes that we have are in the actual command to create a patch, which is calling create patch file from this thing, which is actually doing a thing. So good on us for that. So we've gotten ourselves back to a known state. Hooray. And how are we doing on time here? We are an hour in. So we could continue on with a little bit of this. Now, let's see if we can get a little bit more um, of this stuff in. Context create patch is done now. So actually, let's quit Sublime entirely and restart it to make absolutely for sure that it's fresh. And it looks like everything has loaded. So if I said tools override audit, create patch, create package patch, and it's going to ask me, I say default, and there it is. Nice. It's printing the name of the sidecar and the regular patch file as part because of the, we don't need that file anymore. We don't need that anymore either, due to these two print lines. Oh, sorry, they're over here in the command. My bad. I think. Look, we just saw them a second ago, man. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Ba-ba-ba. Well, that part that I threw away. Okay, there it is. Create patch file. I thought so. Oh, don't freak me out after I've just had all sorts of git type action. Um, but yeah, I guess it's a little farther down in here. There we go. That's where those come from. Good, good, good. Okay, so that's actually doing stuff, right? But this should actually get, as we can see here, I've written it to get, take a patch base and take a patch name. And if you don't provide one, then it uses the default and then comes up with the appropriate names by adding patch and patch sidecar to those paths. So what we should really be doing is calling create patch file with a patch base and a patch name, which this command should be doing by creating this and then using an input panel, unless it's already an argument to the command. So what would we do in this case? I think we'll talk through what we want here. This command should take an argument for base name, which would have the full name and path to something, so that you could provide one if you want. Then when all of this stuff happens, that path is passed through, and then it gets up into make patch, where we go ahead and call it and give it the information there. So how might we do that? It might be time to actually put this stuff into a commit, and then we can sort of iterate on it, and then that whole thing that we were just doing wouldn't happen again. So yeah, let's say let's say that's what we want to do. So let's stage that file, and let's stage that file and say basic patch creation implementation, like so, and just go ahead and commit it, because then we can go ahead and fiddle it around as we deem appropriate. And that's all good. So the first thing is to say that base name equals none, let's say. And the callback should call this with base name. And the callback is loaded, so this should have a base name like this as well. So the way it's currently implemented, that should do exactly what it was doing before. Okay, now let's think of the order of operations here, because we need to know the package, we need to know the base name, and we need to know the package, we need to know the override, and we need to know the base name. Now the base name requires, when you invoke it, that you give it package information so that it can use the name of the package to come up with the base name. So that would indicate that we need to do something here and here. Because what this is doing is, once the package collection thread has come up with the list of all of the packages, it calls our thing. We get the package list from the thread. If there's not a package, should that be an and? Should that not be an or? If package is not none, oh, sorry, yeah. If there is a package and it's not in the package list, then immediately say there's no package named. That happens when you say uh, pass a specific package name to this and it's a package that doesn't exist. If you said package only and package isn't none, then it can make patch with just the package info. Otherwise, if it's not package and we have a package and an override, then we have all the arguments we need, so we can call make patch with the two of them. Otherwise, we need to get the list of candidate packages with overrides and then ask the user, and then it either picks just a package or a package and a resource. And in both cases, we call make patch. So I think the best thing to do here is to say make patch package info. Okay, we'll do it this way. Base name package info override audit. So base name is going to be this. So when it gets called there, that's what happens. Here it gets called with base name and the package info and the override name. Otherwise, after the user selects a package, we get base name and the package list. And if we call package resource browser, then we're calling make page with base name, the package, and the resource. Whoops, like so. Okay, so that carries it all the way through from the argument into this thing where we just call make patch, and one of the arguments is the base name of the actual thing. Great. That is probably cool. So now let's say print, oh, sorry, make patch like this and this, let's say, and this. And we would throw in base name package info and override if override is not none. Well, that. You know, for debug purposes, it's important that your code be really robust. I have problems with that. Okay, so if we said create patch for a package, then let's double check that. Oh, what's this? Oh, hey, that's totally where that's going all wrong. Is that what did that? Hey, that's cool. I totally figured out what horrible thing was happening at line 49 in create patch. Undone. Oh, because this can actually get a none. Oh. You can probably do that if you choose a resource too, huh? If I did this, that's an error. Okay, that's more or less what I would expect. If I did this and picked the package and then did that, it has to go back to there. So, okay, there's a problem. Huh. Great. Maybe this needs to just be swapped a little bit. Maybe it should take the package list and the package name and the package resource. Okay, well, we'll worry about that in a second. But now at least we know what's wrong with that. Okay, maybe make a note here. These generate errors if you cancel, because then the package name is none. And this isn't too smart. Actually, if I did this, That's a problem, but that's not. So maybe I should just use get here for these things instead, and then that problem will go away. That's only for this one, right? Does this return what I think it returns? Let's test this one first. Okay, if I reload that and then I said create patch for a package and then canceled it. Oh. Right. All right, well, we won't worry about that for the time being then. Go ahead and do that. Now, package list is its own thing, isn't it? Let's just verify. None type has no attribute. Yeah, because it expects that thing to return something. That might actually be a problem in the browse code. Create patch line 24. That thing. Was it actually printing that before it? Yeah, it totally was. All right. Well, that's handy to know. If I do that, then creating a patch for a single file and canceling does nothing. That actually shouldn't even do that, I think. Oh, cancel is cancel. Yeah, going up does that, but canceling should do nothing. And if I did it for a single package and canceled, that one still goes wrong because okay, so that's good. Yeah. This covers canceling when you choose a file patch, but not a package patch. Because package list doesn't support get, and trying to look up a package of none causes the expected issues. Okay, and we'll throw ahead a to-do in here. So those things will remind us of that going all wrong. But what we actually wanted to know, I've already kind of forgotten here, is if we did this and pick that, yeah, it's creating a patch. So maybe we just go ahead for the purposes of this and comment this line out. Just so that it doesn't actually create the actual patch. It just prints that. That is about what we would expect. It's getting the package info in there. If we were to pick a single file, then when we do it, we still end up with that. Okay, so that's doing what one would expect in that case. We need that base name to actually be something, because in both cases, it was none. So if base name is none, this is where we need to take the information from here and say base name is equal to os.path.join and default patch base and default patch. Oh, did I not include that in this? Default patch base and default patch name. This also has to be in this list. Like so. And then we can jump to default patch base and default patch name. And when we call it default patch name, we need to call it with the package info and the patch contents, which is the file list, and package only, which are the same arguments that go here. So this actually needs to come here instead. And then so if we called this, we would call it with package name, and we would call it here with override is none. I mean, this is obviously ridiculous, right? And then we could say print base name like this. So if we said we wanted to create a patch for a package and chose default, we might need to import OS here if we're actually going to be, making OS calls. But if we were going to create a patch for this, then we end up with a base name of Home Team Martin desktop default, which we could pass into that command and it would add the .oa patch, which is what we want. If we did it for a single file in default like this, then we end up with that name like what we expect. Okay, now here's more action. This is one of those things where we'll work on it first and then see where it goes after that. And we'll get some coffee here. All right. That'll keep us going. If there isn't a base file name, then we want to do that. Otherwise, we need to say, I need to remember how os.path.split works. Let's bring that over here like this. Yeah, the file name into a head tail where the tail is the last file name component and head is everything leading up to that. The tail part will never contain a slash. Okay, we may need to, but I think that's going to do what we want. So, what were the head tail is equal to os.path.split base name, and then we can print head tail as an example, because I'm thinking if base name was equal to, oh, and this is going to get complicated. If it was sample text, or just sample like this, we reload that. When we choose create patch for a package and choose default, it's going to be, why is there is my print statement all funky? Oh, right. I think we need to do that because it's just printing them. Okay, so now if we do this, create patch, and for default, it's just me wishing I had done that instead, but I think that's gonna, for just default, we end up with no head and the tail is sample. Okay, that's like what I would expect, right? But what if, and this is where it gets complicated, slash home T Martin slash desktop was the thing. And we did it. Yeah, see, we end up with the tail part being that. So what do we do here? Does OS path exists? First, an existing path or an open file descriptor, false for broken symbolic links. Okay, I think that should work. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. Excuse me. Import OS. Sure, that's a path that exists. That's a path that's not. That's a thing that exists because it's a file. So, what would we do here? Elif if base name is none or not os dot. Oh, no, that's not going to work. What we're thinking of here is an idea where you could provide the base name of a file and it would use that as the default. Maybe we don't want to do it that way, though. Maybe that's our problem here. Oh, but we kind of want to do that because otherwise, how are we going to prompt? I'm thinking if you pass in something that's a folder, then it needs to know that it has to come up with a base file name on its own, but it can use the folder that you gave it. If you pass in a full thing, including a file name, then it should be able to use it as is. And if you pass it just the name of a file, it should assume that file name to pick up the base name. So what's the logic there? Yeah. Well, for our purposes here, just for testing purposes, we need this. Oops. Oh, there we go. Self.window.show input panel with something. And the initial text would be base name and then none, because for right now we don't care about any of that stuff. Right, okay. I'm gonna go ahead and do this because we're not gonna care about that per se. Reload this, it reloaded okay. So if we choose this and choose default, we end up with that, which to be honest is not quite what I would have expected to have gone there. Create patch for a single patch. It should be having the, oh, right. Stoopnagel forced it to be a thing, so it's not doing that code. Okay. Create patch for default gives us that like we would expect. And if we chose a single file and chose, say, diff settings, then we get diff_diff.sublime settings.oa path patch. Okay, that's good. Did I have something over here that did that? No, I didn't. We want the caption to be base patch name, like this, I think. So that we can do that. Yeah. When you choose it, that's when it should cycle back around. So this is the whole on done, on change, on cancel. The first one is the one that we actually care about. Okay. What's the good way to pull this off? Because we need to know that if we were given nothing, let's enumerate what we want this matrix to be. Nothing, use default path and name and prompt. Dir only, use dir, default name and prompt. If we had the name only, then use name, default dir, and prompt. Full file name, use but prompt if it exists. So those are the 4 actions that we want to give here, because the idea is whatever you provide in that argument, whether it's nothing or the name of a folder or the name of a file or the name of a thing, then we should use show input panel, and its on done should reinvoke our command with the appropriate arguments to make it call us again with a full base name, so that instead of prompting again, it just makes the patch. Part of that is the idea of knowing if the folder exists. Because if you give a partial name, we might just, yeah, I'm thinking, if you gave just a partial name, then we need to try to be able to determine what your intent was. So if there weren't any path items in it, we could assume that it's a file name. So, oops, let's give this focus. We did that path split thing here. Did we not do a path split thing here? I thought we did. We did exists. Home desktop, home T Martin, let's say. If we did that, it would think there's a file name named desktop. But if we did this, it would think there was no file name. So we could rely on that maybe. We could rely on the idea that if you invoke it, you need to put a slash on the end if you want to default the path. Otherwise, that's the name you want to use. That might actually work. How might we do that? So we might say base. Okay, let's say that the path is equal to something and the name is equal to something. Okay, so if the base name is none, then nothing has been provided. So the path is equal to default patch base, and the name is equal to default patch name, providing the package info for the package whose patch we're creating, the list of files, and override is none to know if it's package only. Otherwise, path and name are equal to OS path split the base name we were given. Like this. And then if not path, path is equal to default patch base, like so, and name is equal to this, right? And again, this could be cleaner, but just to see what we want here. In this case, we definitely want a prompt. In this case, we only want a prompt if not path, right? If there was nothing provided, then we use a full default and ask you to verify. If there's not a path, then we do this. Yeah. We need a way to restructure this logic so that it falls out only when there's a path in this case. Let's do this. The name of the path and the name is this or that. Okay, so if I said none or empty string, we end up with the empty string. And if I said os.path.split on the empty string, we end up with that. And if I said a x and y is equal to that, and then I said true if x, else false, we get false because it's an empty string. That all works. So we take the name that we were given, split it into a path segment and a name. And then we can say if path and name, then print making a patch. And we might actually even return. And making %s/%s, say, and path and name, like that. So that would return. Otherwise, path equals path or default patch base, and name equals name or default patch name with package info and file list, and override is none, like so. And we don't need to worry about that or that or that or that. And then we say this. And here's where we get magic here. We get base name is equal to os path join on path and name, like this, so that we can do that and end up with the appropriate thing. Then we say panel is equal to self.window.show input panel for base name and base name, and on done is equal to lambda name, where we would say self.window.run command. And the problem with this is it's going to recollect the package information again, which is somewhat unfortunate. But see, it would be nice if we knew the name of could find the name of the package in the override without having to do this. Well, I mean, we're feeling out what we want our implementation to be, right? So our command would be override audit create patch, like that. And we would give it arguments of a package of package info.name and an override of override, which is that one, and package only of override is none, and a base name of base name, like that. We don't need to do that anymore. That's still the thing we actually want to do to create the patch, so we should remember that. And that is the call to run command, right? That's the call to... yeah, so this one doesn't actually line up with anything. Oh, that lines up with that. So open, open, close, close. So that's the run command, comma, none, because we don't care about seeing it change. So we reload that and, oh, non-keyword arg after arg, huh? All right. I guess we'll just go ahead and do that. And now it won't reload because it is a broken. Okay. So if we do this and say create a patch for a single file, and it's asking us for one, and we choose default and paste from file, and then we get a base name of home team Martin desktop default paste from history.py, like so, which is the one that we actually want. And when we hit enter on this, the console says it's making that patch. So that has worked. If we create a patch for a package and choose AppleScript, we get that same action there. It's doing that. And I suppose it would actually create the action, because it is doing that and then recalling into the command and coming back to here. The alternate to this would be to not try to come up with a default file name, or to not even prompt you. I'm not sure which one of those is necessarily better than the other. Much in the same way that I don't know that it's a good idea to do this stuff in sort of the general case. Maybe it is a good idea. What do you think? To actually store the name of the temporary file associated with the thing into the buffer. No, because then you have to save the patch that's created. So yeah, I don't like the idea of that. But now in this case, if a name was actually provided and we reload this, then when we do create package or create patch for a package, it just immediately uses that as the base name. But the reason for doing this the way we did is that we want to say panel.cell.clear and panel.cell.add sublime.region, and we want the length of the path to len path plus len name, I think. We'll see what happens. Reload it, and we'll see. Oh, hey, I gotta stop hard coding it to be able to be prompted, right? Okay, so save that, reload that. If we save this, it's gonna do the. No, that didn't like that, huh? Function object. Oh, whoops! I did not add the brackets to this. Okay, there we go. The idea is when you do this, it's going to select the name of the ultimate patch for you to change. Oh, it's off by 1. Man! Len path plus 1. Probably enough to pull that off. Reload. Create a patch for a package default. And oh. I mean, there's probably a better way to pull that off, right? If we said for default, then there's that, and we could change it to my patch, for example, and then it would go ahead and create something. Actually, it did not accept that change, did it? That's interesting. We should double check that. Oh, did I do that stupidly? Yeah, I did. This should be the name that the user entered in the input panel, not the one that they provided as an argument of any. That's not going to work. So if I change this to testy test, then it's creating a patch named testy test on my desktop. Nice. That's one way to pull that off. And if we did it with a single file, then we might choose the actual file. And the full file name is that. Maybe for our purposes, we actually, well, no, we don't want to add the OA patch to the end there. If one file was named OA.patch and another one was named OA patch.sidecar, is that the thing that we want to have happen here? This whole binary file thing is a real pain in the tuchus when it comes to this sort of thing, you know? We never even got to the random part of this whole random operation. That's a bit of a bummer. Still in all, I think we are doing pretty good here. In as much as we're, again, feeling our way through this. So again, no, this has been said in many of these live stream replays, but sometimes, you think of an idea and it's a hard idea and you just have to sort of work your way through it, because there are some pitfalls here that I would not, I think, have thought of until I started implementing it, and we sort of feel our way out to an appropriate situation. And maybe the appropriate situation is you don't get prompted if this thing should actually happen or not. Maybe sure, you don't get prompted for the file name, but you just automatically assume a file name as it has been doing instead. I don't know what the best use case there is. The more you think about it, the more you think the idea that it generates the patch into a view and then saves the sidecar when you save the file, that requires you to actually save the patch, which I don't think is a good idea. Yeah. The other issue with this is the way that this extension is on here. Because you need to know that there's going to be there's going to be an extension added onto this, right? So that might be an issue. Maybe the default file name doesn't include the extension to make that a little bit easier. So default patch name here, say, throws the extension off of if it actually had one. Throws the extension off of the resource name if there is one. And then this would be default paste from history.oa patch. But when you looked in the patch, you'd know what kind of file it was supposed to be. That might be a way to go. Splits the file name path into a pair. Ext is empty or begins with a period. Leading periods on the base name are ignored. So we would maybe do what? os.path.splitExt. This first part, is that what we're talking about here? So if we did this and said default paste from history, that's the base name, and then when you actually generate it, it's paste from history.oa patch. I think that would be handy. Another issue is what happens if you do this and someone chooses a binary file. I guess one thing we do want to do is make sure that the patch file knows that there's a sidecar file attached. So I think that's okay. I think what we would do is boost this up to here. Whoops. Oh, come on, you. I meant to do that. In this window, that package info, that file list, that. Now, I guess I need to do this again because create patch file should take a patch base and a patch name. This would return that, and it would also be path, whoops, path and a name like this. So if we did this and said we want to create a patch for a whole package, then we choose default. This shows us this. We're going to change this to my patch name like this. And we end up with my patch name.oa patch, which is a patch on the package default for the version of that. And this is the file that's in here. Each one of the segments is going to have a package and a version like this. So I think we're liking that for a whole package one. This is really clogging up my desktop, one would imagine. Let's close that and that. Yeah, I got a lot of these things at this point. That's okay. If we create one for a single file, say for C++, this, then it's going to be C++ underscore C++ single file, and we might change that to C++ build system, say, and we end up with C++ build system dot that. Okay, there's nothing in there, but that's just because that is a thing that is currently the same. So let's try that again just to make sure that I didn't bust nothing. If I did this, default paste change like this, and we end up with default paste change patch. Okay, so that's working kind of nice. If it was given as a name like base name is equal to home T Martin desktop my patch like this, then when you try to create the patch, either way, you choose the thing, it's just automatically created for you, which is nice. Okay, so let's say that is what we want. For that, there's still an issue with this. I think that would be none in that case. Yeah. I think the easiest way to fix this would be to say none if package is none else this. So if you did it for a whole package and cancel, nothing happens. And if you do it for a single file and cancel, nothing happens. Even if you do it for a single file and cancel out there. And that's because it's calling this with the package info of none, so nothing happens. Okay, so we get called with a package info of none if the user cancels the browse. So we can do that. We can get rid of that line because we don't care. Like so, I really think that should look like this. That is what one might refer to as ugly, but sometimes you just need to have slightly longer code. Is there a nicer way to make this thing select the appropriate item? Is the issue. That I'm not sure of. You want it to start. Yeah. Oh, actually, maybe there is another way to do that. We do this. The start, oh, sorry, add one more. Okay, like that. The start of the region is the length of the base name minus the length of the name. Does that put it in the right spot to start the file name? Oh, I guess I need to do that first. Excuse me. Should put the cursor at the start. Okay. And len base name like this. I mean, does that actually look nicer than the other one is the question, because that does the same thing. Instead of knowing that the region starts after the length of the path plus 1 and goes for the length of the path plus the length of the name plus 1, it starts at whatever the length of the whole string is minus the file name, and then goes to the end of the input. So I think I kind of like that better because it doesn't have plus 1 a couple of times. It'd be, if the name wasn't base name, that would be nicer. Okay, so let's just double check what we got here. We now take a base name and we pass it up to isLoaded, where we pass it into make patch if we were given the package to do something with, and we pass it into make patch if we were given a package and an override. Otherwise, we prompt if we were given, if after the user selects a package, we pass it in there and also the appropriate package name, which might be none. Otherwise, we do a browse on this, where we pass in the selected package info. Does package browser actually, I guess it must, yeah. Package browser must invoke the thing with, you know what, let's do this. Package browser, yeah. It might be nice if the package browser, when it invokes the callback, it calls it with items IDX. That is the get contents, which is, yeah, return name for name package in. It should return package for name package in. Yeah, and then the thing would have to return package.name for, yeah. It's a tricky business. Okay, well, we won't worry about that at the moment, but we do have some stuff going here. I mean, that's always something that can be cleaned up a little bit later. When we get up into our make patch, if we don't have a thing, we can just leave. Otherwise, we get the full list of things that are going to be patched. We take the base name that we've been given and split it, and which might be empty strings. If we have two parts, then we call create patch file with those two parts for it to do something with. And otherwise, we come up with a default for whichever part was missing. and pass it in. So that means that if we said the base name was equal to my patch like this, and we reload this, when you try to create a patch, whichever way you do it, it uses the default location and just chooses your patch name like this. So in this case, you could invoke it with a default patch name. And because it doesn't have a path, it's asking you because you might want to change the path, but it's selecting the file name because that's probably the part you might want to change here. I mean, the idea of trying to propagate what part of that thing should be selected based on what thing it did or didn't have, we could try to do that, but maybe call that a version 2.5 or something. If this was a folder name like Home T Martin and it has to have a slash on the end of it, like so, then when you do this and create it, now the folder is there and it's defaulted the file name. And if it was this, and I'm going to add desktop to this like so, when you do it, it shows you, sorry, if you actually reload the package and you do it, then it just creates it flat out. I think that is what we want to have happen. We would say generate a patch for either a single file or a whole package. Base name can be none, a path ending in a path separator, or a file name. Base name could be none, a path, a complete path, a path including just a path, including or a file name to specify the default path. Patch file name, and we would go like so. If base name is a complete path, the patch is created directly. Otherwise, the user is prompted to confirm. And we'll do that. Okay, so that's nice. Reload that. That's doing all of what we want for a lot of this stuff. Chihuahua. Control K, Control Shift Z. There we go. We did this. Now we are creating the patch. Let's say we're going to keep that for the time being. Should detect the file's binary, add it to a cycle. Okay, track if the patch ends up empty, delete if it does. Okay, do file patch actually returns whether or not it did something so that we could track that, but we're not doing anything with it right now. So if we use that new key binding we created at the start of this stream, we can come in here and actually start committing these changes in and amending the appropriate previous commits. For example, for basic patch creation, in our make patch, we would say we want to stage this hunk, and we also want to do all of this stuff here. In fact, everything in this whole file, I think, like this. We would just stage, and then we can amend previous commit on that one to do that. So that's what that is. And here, this is part of setup for new patch creation logic. One of the things it created was this patch file. Whoops, I went too far. Oh, actually, it wasn't there, huh? Was it here? No. That's the command. Context create patch. No. Create patch. No. Where did we add patch.py? Is that in here? Well, in any case. Oh, that was actually in this, wasn't it? Yeah. So this is where creating a new setting for the patch and doing that. So this should actually be part of that. So we might stage this with blah, commit one file, and then commit a new setting. This is the one where default patch base came. The only change here is that and this, and we will go ahead and this. So including a new setting for the patch does that. It does that here in the default patch base. It splits the extension on that. And then in this one is our new default implementation. And what we might actually do as well. Yeah, you go ahead and reload that bad boy. Should warn you if the file already exists. But those are all features for another day. So we're just going to go ahead and stage that with a commit message. Oh, sorry, we don't even need to do that. We can just amend the previous commit like so. I really love that command. Oh, no. I should not have typed a message in there. Boom. Can't undo that, can I? Boop. There we go. Stage that and amend. Undo is great, isn't it? Doop. There we go. Okay, so that is going to do it for our stream tonight. We are making some progress here in our feature. So that is pretty exciting, I think. So I'd like to thank you if you joined in on the stream, and if you're watching this afterwards. I hope you enjoyed my fumbling around in Git and coming up with this. We're going to work on this a little bit more, I think, in upcoming streams. There is a little more stuff to do here. As we know, we should be generating this patch file into a temporary file. We should also be creating a sidecar file or deferring the creation of the sidecar file until the first binary file. This thing needs to track how many times do file patch returns true, and if it's none, when it's done, then it should delete the files that it created. Do file patch should recognize that the file is binary, and if so, add it to the thing, but the sidecar, but still return true. Over here in the make patch thing, I'm not entirely pleased with how this might have to call back into itself after the fact, after you choose things. We'll have to see how I'm doing that for other commands, because this does involve package list collection thread having to get and recollect the information for the package you're trying to create the patch for after you're finished browsing, if you haven't provided a name, which is kind of a bummer, but we can't come up with a default name without knowing what the package is. So one way or the other, we need to do something there. I don't know what that'll be. Maybe we won't even go along this route. We'll have to see how this develops. So I, again, would like to thank you for watching. And don't forget, if you would like to watch these live streams and join in on the fun, you can totally do that. You can check the channel page for this channel here. It should tell you when there's something scheduled for upcoming. I try to do it at least by Sunday. I can tell if I'm going to have time on Tuesday to be able to do a live stream, and you can get YouTube to tell you about it. If not, or if these videos are less interesting and you just want the standard Sublime tutorial videos that I'm creating, use the link down in the description to go to my other channel, where you can see a weekly video every Monday at 9 a.m. PST on some sort of Sublime text related topic. And if you have any comments or suggestions on any of my videos, including live videos or suggestions for topics for videos in the other channel or for live streams here, you can leave those in the comment section of a video, or you can also tweet them to me at OdatNurd as well. But until the next live stream or regularly scheduled video, this is OdatNurd asking you to please have a sublime day.